Hi, this is a story I take a lot, and I mean a lot of time writing it that it only has 3 chapters so far. So please be patient with me because I tend to forget about this book and also can't write while sick because I can't think while sick, and that goes for when the season becomes cold and cold to hot. I do not know it happens, it just does. I noticed the twos don't sound at all while, so I may just use the number 2. Anyway, don't like Yoi? You can leave because Yoi is full in this book. Anyway, on to the story. Yoi is gay, by the way. Time swings a different tone. By Cheyenne Ada 14 aka me. Prologue. Time is always swinging back and forth, never stopping until there was a shift and the flow of time stopped suddenly and the world became 4. Each world had their own summoning mechanics, synchro, XYZ, and fusion. The last world had all 3 together, and time started to move again. It had been like this for 14 years, never changing until the last world that had all 3 made its very own summoning called pendulum summoning, and the universe had started to go highwire because of the newest energy source pendulum summoning had bought. Before pendulum summoning came the fusion attacked the XYZ, carding everyone they battled. Nor mother or child could escape from the fusion use's attacks, nor was anyone spared. The goddess of infinity couldn't do much, but watch as the humans carded one another over a crazed man's delusions to revive his daughter, after all she did to stop Zark's path on destroying everything. This needed to stop before Zark's counterpart pieces would be tainted by the darkness that had been left over from both Zork and darkness. She thought about it for a while and decided to call her power of time to bring forth someone from the long-forgotten past that would help stop this madness before it peaked to chaos levels that even Loki wouldn't like. Searching and searching until she came upon Death's afterlife for the dearly departed to reside to live out a happy life with their loved ones and the freedom they earned. Death must have sensed her presence because he appeared before her. Death looked just like the many myths, but in the realm of death he had a magical form of a human body, unlike all the myths knew of him as just a skeleton wearing a black cloak. He was the most gentle of souls, unlike what the mortals believed, because he proclaimed to take lives, but in related, he only those who just died to his realm. "What are you doing in my realm, Infinity?" he asked as the parted souls of butterflies surrounded him. Infinity liked Death because he was kind, unlike many humans she had observed all over the multiverse, and he was a very gentle soul, even though he had to deal with souls of the corrupted. "I'm here because of the recent world I have been watching. I'm worried about its future that I've seen. I've been searching and searching, but no luck until I come across a memory from the far past, and there is only a single person who has saved the world many times over along with their friends," she explained while showing him the person who she was referring to. Death closed his eyes while rubbing the underneath of his chin. "I don't have a problem with that one with going back to living, but we need life's permission because without her permission then that person stays in the afterlife." "All right. Let's go ask her if she is willing to give permission then." Infinity smiles at him as they travel to Life's realm together, making small talk with each other as they walk together. Once they entered Life's realm, Life appeared before them with the brightest smile on her face. "Infinity, Death, what brings you to my domain?" she asked them as the departed butterflies that followed Death swarmed her. "Hello, my lovely dearlings," she cooed to the butterflies. "I came to ask permission to allow one of Death's collected souls to return to the living," Infinity spoke as she watched the butterflies landed on Life's arms and head. "Possible I can give permission for such one of my creations to live, but why do you want them to return to relive life again? After all they did earn their peace." Life looked at her, wanting to know why one of creations should relive a life after being dead for so long. So Infinity told her everything from what happened to what she had seen. Life listened to everything she had to say before she nodded her head in agreement. "I see. And you want to prevent that future?" Yes, I want the departed souls Zark and Ray to live in peace, while their counterparts live their own lives and not because of madman wants to bring his daughter to have her to suffer from his own decisions, especially the counterparts. As Infinity spoke, she held onto her obsidian pendulum out of reflex. Life grabbed a hold of her hand that was clutching onto the pendulum, causing her to loosen her grip from it. Your worry for my creations makes me happy that you care for them. Infinity, Life told her gently, and death joined the hand-holding. You can bring them to that world alive, but you are taking all the responsibility afterwards. Infinity nodded her head, knowing full well of the trouble of being that person back to the land of the living, especially with that person. I swear on my entire being I will take full responsibility if it comes down to it. She swore to them, and the three of them left for Infinity's own realm. When they arrived, all three of them used their powers to bring forth a single soul, and gliding it towards one of the split worlds with all summonings, Life made sure that the soul wouldn't suffer from remembering their life, before right away making them forget everything but their name. Death was a bit sad that one of his own was leaving him, but knew that the soul must go, and will eventually come back to him. The soul speed down to the world, not knowing that it was in the ride of its life.
Chapter 1. Waking up all sore all over wasn't the greatest feeling he ever had, or was this the first time of feeling sore? As he tried to think if he ever had, his brain started to hurt. All he could remember was what his name was and nothing more beyond that. He looked around to see if he could get a familiar sense of feeling, but there was none. After letting out a sigh, getting up off the ground, feeling his legs wobble a bit, as he stood he held onto the building as he tried walking in between buildings. He got to a big open space and saw a group of people and 3 kids on the ground. I'm afraid to interrupt, but can I please have some help? This caused them all to look at him as he struggled to stand. The one with glasses pushed his glasses back on his face as he watched Yugi closely, probably trying to see if he was a threat or not. He just turned away, leaving him to suffer on his own, along with other people like he was the boss of them. The other man gave him a glance before walking away as well, after standing there for a good while with the look of uncertainty. Once they all left him alone was when Yugi's legs decided to give out. Letting out a sigh of frustration, he already left the strong urge to not trust those people because they wouldn't help someone in need. He was about to try to stand again when a girl with bright pink hair came running into the very place. She said something underneath her breath and was about to leave when she noticed him and ran over to him. "Are you okay?" she asked as he struggled to get up. "I don't really know," he told her honestly, and she helped him stand upright, as well as help him walk out in the open. "I'm going to call someone, okay?" she told him as she helped him to an area with a place to sit, which he was grateful for, and nodded his head as he sat down on the black bench. She smiled at him before moving out his earshot. As soon as she did, Yugi felt sleep overcome him and his vision faded away. The next he knew, he was in a different place surrounded by gold and white walls of stone. He couldn't control his actions as his body turned around to face someone's face who was blurred out to him. "Good morning, Mauhitori no Boku," he felt himself say, and felt something warm wrap around him as the other person brought him in their arms. The other person spoke, but he couldn't hear what the other person had spoken as everything faded away. He opened his eyes and blinked a few times to let his eyes focus as he was now in a new place that he didn't recognize at all, and it was daytime now as well. His stomach growled loudly, and he had the need to eat something and found on the nightstand a plate of food wrapped up for him. He unwrapped it and ate the delicious pancake that was made into a sandwich, and his hunger was now satisfied. Yugi didn't know what time it was, nor did he know where he was, but he wasn't going to sit there forever without an explanation. Before he got up, the door opened. A woman with green eyes and blonde hair with gold bangs entered the room and smiled as soon as she saw him. A boy with red eyes and had hair that was green and red poked his head in through the door frame. "I'm glad you're awake, gave Yuzu quite a start," she told him as she walked over to him, sitting down next to in a wooden chair. "I want you to answer my questions honestly." All right," Yugi said softly as he looked at her, wondering why she was doing this. "What's your name?" "Yugi Muto." "What is your age?" "I don't know." "Do you know which city we are currently in?"
No.
"Do you remember anything before waking up in the alleyway Yuzu found you in?"
No.
The questions kept going for R.A. knows how long. When she finished asking him questions, she allowed him to ask questions in return. And to be honest, he didn't ask much besides where he was, who they were, and who changed him out of clothes into pajamas, to which she answered him honestly. She told him he was in Miami City and that a male friend of hers changed his clothes since she didn't want to make him uncomfortable when he woke up, and that her name was Yoko Sakaki and the boy peeking in the doorway was her son Yuya. After a while, she left the room and Yuya wandered inside and took her place next to him. I looked through your deck. Sorry for snooping. Yuya apologized to him, rubbing the back of his head. Yugi must have had a confused look on his face. Oh, right. You probably have no clue what I'm talking about. Yuya opened the nightstand's drawer and grabbed a deck of cards out before handing them to Yugi. Yugi took them gently and immediately felt a familiar feeling running through him as he touched them, but couldn't tell what the feeling was, but he knew he felt a bit of relief spread through him afterwards and didn't understand why. It's okay, as long as you didn't try to steal them, he told him with a gentle smile before looking through the cards, and only a few his brain seemed to recognize. The few cards were Silent Magician, Dark Magician Girl, Dark Magician, Silent Swordsman, and Gondora the Dragon of Destruction. He felt like had a connection to them, but couldn't really place why. When you're feeling better, can we duel? Yuya asked him suddenly, and Yugi just looked at him bewildered. I mean, if you want, you dash. And then a giant fan hit Yuya on the head. Yuya, you just don't ask someone to duel while they're on bed rest. The pink-haired girl from yesterday who helped him out, and mostly the one who got him to this home with help. Ow, Yuzu, that hurt. Yuya complained as he rubbed the spot. She hit his head with her fan. You deserve it after asking Mr. Muto that, especially since he doesn't remember how to duel. She continues to scold him, pointing her finger at him.
I'm sorry.
Yuya whined out towards her. Don't apologize to me. She countered back at him, smacking him with the fan again and again, causing Yuya to flee from her, but she just ran after him. They ran around in circles with Yuzu yelling at Yuya, and Yuya running from her, also yelling for her to stop hitting him with her fan. Yugi couldn't hold it in and started laughing at the pair, causing them both to stop and look at him. They both smiled, seeing him laugh happily. A woman watching through Yuzu's eyes with one of the 4 crystal balls from the afterlife smiled at the scene playing before as a man walked in the place they both shared. They had been enemies once, but now she understood that wasn't in his right mind when was destroying everything they loved. She couldn't take back the sacrifice she had made to save everyone, though she had been sorry for life and death having to work overtime because of both of her and his decisions. Whatcha looking at love? He asked to sit down next to her before nuzzling into her hair. I'm looking through Yuzu's eyes currently. Apparently the pharaoh's lover has been brought back from the dead, but he has no memories of his life before he was brought back. She giggled as her lover was so warm and affectionate with her. He had been this way ever since they become an official couple in the afterlife, which took 10 years to happen because she had been not happy he had been brought to same afterlife as her. But during those 10 years, he tried his hardest to prove to her that wasn't ever going ever hurt her ever again. The pharaoh's not gonna be happy, he muttered into her hair, and she nodded her head in agreement. The pharaoh and his light had been there long before her and Zark was, and the both of them were inseparable. For the other souls they heard from was that their love was a true one, and that they saved the world many times over together. Yeah, but what we've seen through Yuri's and Serena's eyes, my father is trying his hardest to revive me. She sighed as she put Yuzu's crystal back on the table next to Yuya's crystal. I wish he'd stop this madness and let me go and stop hurting so many people in the process. Tears began to fall down her face, and Zark held onto her tightly. It will be okay. We just have to hope he is stopped soon. Unbeknownst to them, the pharaoh was angry and was getting out of control as his priest and friends just watched him take out many items that replaced themselves after it was broken time and time again. And none of them interfered because they didn't want to be targeted by his wrath. A woman with raven black hair, with what looked like glitter spread throughout her hair, appeared in the pharaoh's throne room. She wore black and purple long silk dress, which also had glitter throughout the dress as gold spirals lined at the bottom of the dress as an obsidian pendant hung from her neck. And that was not all. She wore black choker with a silver infinity symbol on said choker. Her eyes were strange because they were both purple and red at the same time. She also had a staff in her hand made of obsidian and sapphire dust. My pharaoh, you requested my presence? She asked him calmly. He looked at her with a glare causing everyone but the woman to flinch from his glare. I didn't request for you. I requested for life and death to ask why they would take my beloved from me. He snapped at her. Yes, they did return him back to living, but it was under my request they did so. So it's my responsibility for bring him back, not theirs, she told him, her eyes never leaving his own dark purple eyes. And why, pray tell, did you decided to take him away from me, Infinity? He yelled at her, and she took on the force of his wave of anger towards her head on. Because he is needed to fix what was broken as well to stop a madman from killing many more people in the name of his daughter. She lightly tapped the bottom of her staff on the floor, causing the world around to change to one of destroyed heartland. He has already done this much damage against innocent people living their own lives, and that includes innocent children, turning them into cards for energy to restore his deceased daughter. He already has captured 2 of her counterparts from different versions of the world, such as from the XYZ and Synchro dimensions. The fusion and standard, now called pendulum, thanks to Zark's counterpart, haven't been caught yet. And I'm afraid if he isn't stopped, darkness will return to Zark's counterparts' hearts, and they'll fuse to create an abomination that is human but dragon-looking. I want to stop this before all 8 of those kids are forced to become something they shouldn't be. I had searched and searched for solutions to stop the madman's plans. I already gone through if it was the other heroes and each one could have worked, but the time would restart once they were brought back to the afterlife. But I found a blind spot in the whole thing when it came to your pharaoh, she started to explain as she showed him many of the other scenarios played before him. It's because his soul is connected to yours that the world wouldn't reset itself, because while you're here, pharaoh, while he's alive, the world can't count the path he takes it on as false. So he'll come back to me after all this is done with? He asked the goddess before him as he sat down upon his golden throne. Correct, and you are able to go to him through the puzzle if he is wearing it, and you can only interfere once and only once if he is in great danger, but he currently doesn't have it because it is still here with you, pharaoh. After she said that, he looked down at his puzzle before looking back at her. He had to somehow get the puzzle to Yugi naturally, so he'd be with him again even if the other couldn't see him. But why make him go back without any of his memories of his life before? Wouldn't the knowledge of his previous life guide him through this new journey to stop this proclaimed madman, as you speak of? He questioned her. If I had left him with his memories, then the pain of being apart from you and his friends would be too much to bear on his shoulders alone. And I didn't want him to suffer being alive again, though day by day he'll get his memories back. They won't make sense to him, but he'll get each and every one of them back, especially at the end of his mission, pharaoh. If your plan fails, Infinity, you're going to face more than just my wrath alone. He turned to face 2 of his friends. One was in the rank alongside his other priest, Mana Mahud. I have a task for you to do. Yugi was alone now in the room since Miss Sakaki shooed them both away as they were causing a ruckus and needed to get to sleep because it was late already. She also gave him some food to eat for dinner that night, and he loved her food. It was delicious after he had eaten. She had helped him try to walk for about 4 hours, and they got a bit somewhere with it because he could now stand for at least 5 minutes now before his legs gave in. She had advised him that he should keep trying, and if he needed to go to the bathroom, he could hug the wall while working on his walking at the same time, or just crawl if that made him more comfortable before she left him for the night. To be honest, he was lucky to have these kind people to help him out, unlike those people who just left him the alleyway to suffer. He was really thankful that Yuzu was the only person who actually tried to help him. He looked outside at the moon and smiled before falling asleep. As he dreamed, he was in a different room than the one he fell asleep in. It looked very familiar to him, though he didn't understand why. The room had a single bed with toys everywhere. There were no windows, but there was a door. Yugi walked over to the door and opened it. Once he opened it, it led him to an endless hallway, and there was a door across to the one he just opened. He wanted to open it, but his body refused to move and his head started to pound aggressively, so he just went back to the other room and closed the door before laying down on the bed to try to get the headache to go away. As he laid there, his vision started to blur, and he was somewhere else, but he realized he was floating in the air, and that his headache was gone, which was a relief to him. He was in the sky watching everything happening down below. He couldn't hear or see anyone's faces but his own voice and face. He was talking to someone on top of a building. All he could hear was sister, eye surgery, tournament, and prize money, even though he didn't understand what was being said. But what his brain was gathering in his head was a conclusion of what was being talked about. Was that whoever this person was that needed to win some kind of tournament for their sister's eye surgery to be paid in full from the tournament's prize money. After he came to that conclusion, the scene changed to that room he dreamed of the first time, but this time he was only watching himself doing naughty stuff with the same person he dreamed up last time, and his face was still blurred out. Yugi wanted to look away but couldn't. He was forced to watch as he watched himself make love with another person who was indeed a male. He jolted up in a sweat. He was blushing darkly as he remembered his dream. He shook his head, trying to clear his head from the dream, but with no luck. He got up out of the bed and held onto the wall as he needed to go to the bathroom. As he got out the door, he saw a few doors from where he was, and the sun was currently rising. As he got to Yuya's room, Yuya swung the door open, hitting him straight on, causing him to be squashed behind the door. Yuya must have noticed because he quickly panicked and moved the door off of Yugi and helped him stand while trying to get the air back into his lungs.
Sorry.
Yuya screamed out, causing him to flinch from the loudness, and Yuya repeated the sorry, but in a whisper this time. It's fine, Yuya, Yugi told him. I just need to use the bathroom. Since I caused a delay for you, I'll help you get there. With that, Yuya helped him get to the bathroom while waiting outside the door for his own turn to use the bathroom. Yugi took care of himself quickly with a rag, soup and water before getting out the bathroom, and Miss Sakaki, who was there by the time. He exited the bathroom along with Yuya, of course. She helped him back to his room and gave him his clothes he was wearing before waking up in this house to change into before leaving him to his own privacy. A smile formed on his face, and he quickly changed into his clothes, though he did have some trouble getting on his pants, but managed to get them on in the end. After putting on his socks and shoes, he tried to working on his walking by himself for a good 2 hours and managing not to fall after his 60th attempt. He walked out the room and headed out the room without help and made it to the stairs. Since he didn't trust that he wouldn't fall down the stairs, he sat down and scooted his butt down the stairs instead of walking down them. Once he was down the stairs, he used the railings of the stairs help him back up onto his feet. Once he was on his 2 feet, he went towards the kitchen and joined Ms. Yoko and her son for breakfast. As they ate, Yuya excitedly told Yugi about the Junior Youth Championship that he was taking part of starting tomorrow morning. Ms. Sakaki told Yuya that he had to help Yugi out today, and before the other could complain, she reminded him of him hitting Yugi with the door and waking her up. Yuya gumbled out but nodded his head. After he and Yugi finished eating their breakfast, Yuya forced Yugi to come with him, though he actually wanted to help Ms. Sakaki wash dishes. Yugi sighed as they slowly made their way down to the city. They were only going slow because Yugi wasn't walking that far away yet, much to Yuya's annoyance. As they walked, they came across 2 people running a small game stand, and they looked really familiar to him. Yuya tried to get Yugi to stop looking at them but couldn't as Yugi walked over to them to see what was going on. Yuya sighed in annoyment as he followed after the other. Excuse me, but what are you doing? Yugi asked in curiosity as he reached the pair. The girl smiled at him very brightly at the sight of him. Well, my dear lad, it's your lucky day. Guess the riddle and get a prize. She told him with a smile before her male companion spoke. The riddle is, comes in bits and pieces, put together forms a whole. It's athletics for the mind. The more you think, the more you find. Sometimes it can be a grind, but then, that is the goal. Yugi thought for a while before answering. Puzzle? He asked as the girl did a dramatic gasp. You got it correct. And here is your prize for guessing it right away. She handed him a golden box with ancient hieroglyphs on the box. Yuya whined a bit as Yugi got the prize. Want a prize too? Yuya whined and the girl giggled at him. Okay, you can get a prize too if you get this riddle correctly at Chinese New Year celebrations. I breathe fire, dance, and run amok. With a few men to guide my steps. My presence brings good fortune and luck. What am I? She asked him with a smile while the man rolled his eyes at her. Dragon. Yuya answered right away with a smile. Correct, she sang out, handing him his prize, which was also a box, but with 4 different shapes of dragons on it and bracelets that looked like one Yuzu wore on the box. Guess we're out of prizes now, she sighed as she looked at the man. Okay, we can go get ice cream. The man sighed and she cheered at that. As they started to pack up their stuff, Yugi spoke up, stopping the pair in their tracks. Do I know you? He asked, causing them and Yuya to look at him. I'm only asking because you look familiar to me. Neither spoke for a while before the male spoke. No, we don't know you, sir. Honestly, we don't know, he told him while looking at him. Maybe we crossed paths in another life, and that maybe be why you think we look familiar to you. Oh, sorry. Yugi gave him a sad smile. I'm sorry for disturbing you. Come on, Yugi. Yuya tugged on his sleeve to get his attention. Oh, right. He smiled happily again before facing the pair one last time. It was nice to meet you both. Have a good day. He shouted as he followed after him. Once both the boys were out of earshot, the girl let out a long sigh of relief. Man, was that hard trying to hold back from hugging him? She whined as the stand disappeared by a snap of the man's fingers. Mana, we aren't here to play around. We are here on the Pharaoh's request. So why did you give that boy a prize after we finished our set task? He questioned the younger. Mahad, you're no fun. She pouted as they entered the shadows. And Ray gave that to negate the effect of the bracelets on the girls she watches, and it's also to help the boys that Zark watches from becoming one. Before we left, and she made me promise to give it to Yuya when we achieved our task. That's a good reason, but still you should inform me or the Pharaoh first, he told her with a sigh. Oh, don't be such a worrywart. She stuck her tongue out at him as they entered the Pharaoh's palace doors.
Mana.
He started to scold her as she started to run from him as they entered. Chapter 2. Once Yuya and Yugi made it to Yusho Duel School after many stops due to Yugi's legs giving out once in a while, but they had made it. The girl who helped him greeted him happily, glad he was walking on his own without help. There was also a boy named Sora with light blue hair and light green eyes who he felt was off, and the personality he gave was mostly fake. The three little kids, Ayu, Futoshi, and Tatsuya were fun to be around, and they'd show him how duel entertainment worked, and he did enjoy watching them duel, though he had to sit in a chair for a good few hours because of his legs. But he was having fun nonetheless. As soon as it became nightfall, Yuzu's father Shuzo offered to take Yuya and Yugi back to the Sakaki family home, and they accepted. When they got there, Ms. Sakaki had made dinner for the three of them, which they ate. Afterwards, Yugi helped her wash the dishes before heading up to the room he was staying at with the box he had won early. Yuya's own prize was completely different from his own. While his own was golden puzzle pieces, Yuya's was 8 keychain figures that were all different. There were 4 different dragons and 4 female-type monsters. One of the dragons looked just like Odd Eye's pendulum dragon, which Yuya attached to his pendant necklace, and one of the female monsters looked just like Bloom Diva, the melodious choir, which was Yuzu's recent dual monster ace. So Yuya gave her the keychain, which she put on her bracelet. With the other ones, Yuya kept in his pockets as good luck charms. But Yugi had a feeling Yuya was going to give them to people who had the same monster as the keychains. Yugi placed the puzzle pieces on the desk in the room he was staying in carefully, not wanting to lose any of them. The box itself he could read, but he didn't know why he could read it. When the kids asked him what it read, he told them, and they all exploded with questions with how he could read hieroglyphs, which had given him a terrible headache as he tried to remember. Yuzu scolded the kids, and Yuya got some water and pain medication for Yugi, which he took gratefully. Letting out a sigh, Yugi sat in the chair next to desk and started putting it together with the wish to remember his past in his mind as he put it together. When he put the last piece in it, it started to glow, and as he held it in his hands, he felt a warmth spread through his body. Unbeknownst to him, an energy wave pulsed from the puzzle, alerting the tops at LDS. Their boss watched the screen where the energy wave came from and took mental note to keep an eye on Yuya Sakaki, but doubted that it had been the boy but someone else close to him. Though his mind did wander back to the stranger asking for help the other night, he had his men go back for him hours after he had left, but when they reported to him that he was gone, he had a feeling someone helped him. With the cameras around the city that have been set up long ago, and with the recordings from the cameras, he saw Yuya's friend Yuzu help out the person Yuya along with her father after the person had passed out on a bench. During the day, Yuya had been with the stranger and looked like the two were bonding very well, so he didn't worry much. Something inside of him told him to keep tabs on this stranger, and he was glad that Yuya was now close with that person and most likely now living with each other. So, he suspected that the person was the result of that energy wave, and it wasn't either Yuya or Yuya's mother's fault, because if it had been Yuya, it would have involved pendulum summoning, and that would only happen if Yuya was dueling. Keeping an eye on the stranger as well would be worth it, since nothing came up in the database about him or who he was, and he didn't trust the stranger either, since they could be from the fusion dimension, as he already expected Sora Shiunin was from there. The Pharaoh had requested both Zark's and Ray's for their presence in his throne room, and Ray was feeling very nervous about meeting him for the first time since her and Zark's deaths. She heard so many stories about the man and his host from other souls, and they would always tell her that Pharaoh was a kind man and he never hurt anyone on purpose. Her grab on Zark's arm was tight, and she hoped she wasn't hurting him too much from her tight hold. Zark was holding in his other hand a box with their 8 crystal balls to see through their counterparts' eyes. They were ordered to bring them along with them, and neither of them knew why they were ordered to bring them. They were now outside the pharaoh's palace walls that were guarded by soldiers from different time periods, and 2 of them looked alike, but had both looked from different time periods, and they were currently arguing with each other. You can't possibly believe Kizara likes you better just because you've been dueling with her longer. The one from Egypt Times yelled at the one who used to be known for creating the dual disc system before the world split into 4. She does like me more, believe me or not. I had multiple versions of her. I even had let her evolve more to where she could become stronger. The other countered back at him. Zark and Ray quickly moved away from the pair before they were pulled into their fight and headed to the gate of the palace walls. They saw a woman that had Egyptian clothing on as that man they saw before, and she wore a headpiece that had a golden bird and a golden necklace with an eye in the middle of said necklace. She appeared to be waiting for them. When got closer, she smiled and led them to the pharaoh's throne room. Ray was in love with the palace. It was a beautiful sight to behold. The walls were made of sandstone, and the pillars were made of gold, as well as the path leading to the pharaoh's throne. Not to mention there was animal status everywhere, as well as paintings of the wall of the beloved gods and goddesses. But the one painting stood out among the rest. It was a group of people she'd seen a few times but never interacted with. She recognized the pharaoh and his lover instantly. The 2 men she saw early in the painting was also the woman that led them to the pharaoh's throne, and she, like the 2 men, had a doppelganger, but her clothes looked more modern than the other woman. She must have been admiring the painting for a long time because she had been startled out of her daze by a male's voice. It seems you really like my Abis-requested painting of his and my friends. She turned to see the pharaoh smiling at her before turning to face the painting. The friends we've made are the best thing we've ever had in both our living timelines. Even our friends from different timelines, after saving the future from Paradox, thought destroying the guy who made the card game would change his own future. Of course, it would have failed him regardless if we hadn't stepped in, because someone else would have continued after Pegasus died. He touched his lover's image, closing his eyes before slowly moving away from the picture, and looked at her and Zark. I've called you here to not talk about the painting, he started as he folded his arms across his chest. I called you here to ask you to stay here within the palace until my Adu returns. I heard from Mana that you could see through the eyes of your counterparts, and I want you to only stay so I can keep an eye on my Ibu while he is away. Can you do that for me? The next morning, Yuya had found Yugi sleeping at the desk in the spare bedroom and was about to wake him when he noticed the golden pyramid on a chain. Yugi was holding onto it as he slept, and Yuya didn't really want to wake him up because he looked adorable asleep, but the tournament was starting today, and he didn't want Yugi to miss the experience of entertaining dueling. So he gently woke him up. After Yugi woke up, and Yuya was a bit freaked out when Yugi started muttering about Egypt and blurry faces and names he couldn't hear them say from his dreams. Yuya didn't bother asking Yugi about it because Yugi was still very much half asleep and helped him up so he wouldn't struggle getting up. After helping him up, Yuya left, so Yugi could have privacy, and he went downstairs to help his mom with breakfast. After a while, Yugi came down the stairs and helped set up the table with Yuya. Yuya noticed that Yugi was wearing the golden pyramid, and he wondered how Yugi could carry such a heavy item around his neck without getting strained out. His mom asked a question about it, and Yugi gave her an honest answer and told them both it felt familiar to him but didn't know why. When they finished eating, Yuya hesitated to leave to go to Yusho Duel School, so he and his friends could head off to where the tournament would be held. When everyone was waiting at the van, he left before Mr. Hiragi finished his speech and ran away to the bridge where he and his father spoke last time before he had disappeared. Covered his eyes with his goggles before taking his pendulum off before starting to swing it in front of his eyes. He didn't know how long he was there until his mom came to talk to him to get him moving before he was late for the sign-in. When got there, he got a scolding from Yuzu when he arrived as well from Gonganzaka for almost being late. When everything started, Yuya honestly didn't know he was the one doing the main speech and was really nervous about the whole thing. He honestly wanted to punch Mr. Smiley for putting him in this stressful situation. But one looked towards where his mother, Mr. Hiragi, and Yugi were, and suddenly, he felt the courage to go on with his speech, and everyone started clapping for him. He felt so proud of himself. Afterwards, the tournament officially started. The kids were going first, and 2 out of the 3 of them won their first duels quite quickly, but Au lost her first duel against Riley Akaba. Yugi felt something off about Riley since they didn't robot more than human during the duel, and to him that wasn't for a child to act in that way. A child should show at least some real emotion instead of one that just looked like a person who didn't want to suffer anymore and to be free. Before Yugi could check on the young child, he was dragged away by Yuya and Yuzu, so he could watch their first matches. He made a mental note to be able to get a chance to talk to the young child when gets the chance to.
That's the end for now. See you all soon.